When you hear Bayer Leverkusen, you now think of Xabi Alonso, Florian Wirtz, and their unbeaten Bundesliga winning season. However, before the arrival of the Spaniards, Leverkusen were nicknamed Neverkusen. So here is the story. Leverkusen are owned by Bayer, the drugs company, which has produced fan favourites such as aspirin. The sporting organisation, which was founded for the workers of Bayer, was founded in 1904, with the football team appearing in 1907. In 1979 they would be promoted first time to the Bundesliga, and they actually have not been relegated since. In 1987, after 6th place finish in the Bundesliga, they were qualified for the UEFA Cup, and a year later would win their first major honour as a club, following a 3-2 win against Espanyol on penalties in the final. Then in 1990, one of the most important moves happened of this next decade or so, when Rainer Koolman would be promoted from a member of the board to chairman of the club. Koolman would start scouting and investing in different markets. And this is where you see this core of this Leverkusen team start to form. One of those markets was East Germany. Obviously, why German clubs could appeal to East German clubs is due to the vast amounts more of money they had and the quality of football at their disposal. And so Koolman he brought Andreas Thom from Dynamo Berlin, and he also brought in former Stasi informant and striker Ulf Kürzen from Dynamo Dresden. And Kürzen would become a key player for Leverkusen over the next decade. Kürzen's teammate Matthias Sammer nearly followed him to Leverkusen. However, this move required political intervention from the German Chancellor at the time, Helmut Kohl. The reason for this, it said that Bayer had started to invest in East Germany, as in the Bayer drugs company were investing in East Germany. They were spending ridiculous amounts of money on plants to manufacture their drugs or whatever, and buying factories, whatever. And this also had an impact on the Bayer footballing team, as we see here. Kohl stepped in and said, as a global brand and as a football team, Bayer and Leverkusen should not be investing in solely players from East Germany. And the Chancellor basically asked Leverkusen to stop doing this. Sammer has also said he wasn't totally sure of the move to Leverkusen, and ultimately fell through, and instead Sammer would move to Stuttgart. Koolman also would begin to invest in Brazilian players, and which we'll see later on, and he brought back the likes of Rudi Völler to Germany from his exploits in Europe. And this would have an immediate effect, as in the early 90s, Leverkusen won their first major domestic trophy, as they beat Hertha Berlin's second team. Yes, I did say second team, it's a long story, in the DFB Pokal final. However, the club did nearly get relegated in the 95-96 season. However, that summer they would hire Christoph Daum as their head coach. And the eccentric Daum immediately had an impact with the club bouncing back and finishing second in the 96-97 season, only 2 points behind Bayern Munich, with Kürzen finishing top scorer for the second time with 22 goals. However, this would become the start of Leverkusen's infamous run. The following season, Leverkusen would finish third, 13 points behind Bundesliga winners Kaiserslautern, but Kürzen would finish again as top goalscorer, again with 22 goals. That summer, Leverkusen would spend a large fee on a Brazilian midfielder from Real Madrid named Zé Roberto, and then 98-99, the Werkself would finish 15 points behind Bayern Munich in second place. And then this summer was the most transformative for Leverkusen, as players who would become major players in the next few years would join. So Oliver Neuville from Hansa Rostock for 4.5 million euros, while a young midfielder from Kaiserslautern's winning side called Michael Ballack joined for 2.5 million. So then the 99 to 2000 season was the start of the true Neverkusen tag. Heading into the final game of the season, Leverkusen held a 3-point lead over Bayern Munich, but the Bavarians had a superior goal difference. Leverkusen would play mid-table Unterhaching, while Bayern would play Bremen. All Leverkusen needed was a point. In the 20th minute, Ballack would score an own goal before Marcus Oberleiter's 72nd minute would condemn Leverkusen to second place, with Bayern Munich beating Bremen 3-1. It would mean Leverkusen lost the title on goal difference. The game became known as Das Wunder von Haching. Unterhaching, there we go. Following Leverkusen's spectacular final day loss, Daum was set to take charge of the German national team after they had crashed out of Euro 2000, but an agreement was reached with Leverkusen that Daum would not become head coach for a year because they needed to find a replacement, so in his place, Rudi Völler would be in temporary charge. However, an article by a tabloid in the Munich press, and then comments made by Uli Hoeneß, who quite simply was a bit of an op for Daum. I mean, they had history, and there's a well-known moment on TV where before a top of the table clash between Cologne and Bayern Munich, Uli Hoeneß and then Bayern manager Jupp Heynckes is sitting across from Christoph Daum and Udo Lattek at Cologne, and it's just Daum and Hoeneß going at each other time and time again. And so this comment by Hoeneß had implied that Daum had potentially taken cocaine, with saying, if someone can prove it, I'll believe it. And then this obviously started a snowball effect. And so the Leverkusen head coach continued to deny that he'd taken cocaine, and he would state his innocence, and he would initially refuse to have his hair be tested. But then a week later he completely changed his mind and he demanded his hair to be tested. The reason hair is tested is that it can show potential cocaine usage up to a year in the past. Daum's test would come back positive, and this would prompt Daum to miss out on becoming Germany head coach, and he would then resign as Leverkusen head coach in October 2000. And Rudi Völler would take charge on an interim basis before Berti Vogts would come in as a manager for the rest of the season, where Leverkusen would finish fourth, securing their place in the Champions League qualifiers for next year's competition. But in the winter of 2001, Leverkusen made two further signings which have some importance, with Lucio joining from Internazionale in Brazil and Dimitar Berbatov joining from CSKA Sofia in his native Bulgaria. In the summer, Vogts would be replaced by Klaus Tottmann. Yes, he is the father of current Eintracht Frankfurt head coach Dino Tottmann. Now, the 2001-2 season is the season people think of when they talk about Leverkusen. Leverkusen had a great season, and after matchday 31, with 3 games left, Leverkusen had a 5-point lead over Borussia Dortmund, following the latter's loss to Kaiserslautern. And it looked as if Leverkusen could even win a treble. If Leverkusen had won the treble in this season, they would have become the first German team to do so. Ultimately, the first German team to do so was Bayern Munich in 2012-13. Leverkusen's final 3 games of the season would be against Werder Bremen, who were fighting for European place, Nuremberg, who were fighting relegation, and Hertha Berlin, who were looking to finish in the top 4. Leverkusen would lose to Bremen, while Dortmund would beat Cologne. The gap would now be 2 points. Leverkusen would follow up with a loss against Nuremberg, while Dortmund beat Hamburg 4-3, meaning Dortmund are now 1 point ahead of Leverkusen. So heading into the final day, Leverkusen had to hope that Dortmund would fail to beat Werder Bremen to help them secure the title. And there was a brief moment where it looked like it was possible, when in the 70th minute, the score was 1-1, while Leverkusen were beating Hertha 2-0. But in the 74th minute, Dortmund would score the winner. But, over the next 11 days, Leverkusen had a chance of redemption, as they still had the DFB Pokal final and Champions League final to play. So you're probably wondering, how did they get in this situation? Well, first, the Pokal would be their next game following their final day title loss. And Leverkusen had gotten to the final following wins against Jan Regensburg, Bochum, Hanover, 1860 Munich and Cologne, in extra time to set up a final against Schalke. After going in 1-1 at half time, Leverkusen would collapse and end up losing the game 4-2. Now, out of 3 possible trophies, Leverkusen only had one left, and that was the Champions League. So Leverkusen got to the Champions League through the qualifying round, which they won, and they would end up in a group with Barcelona, Lyon and Fenerbahce. And they would ultimately end up finishing second in this group behind Barcelona, even beating the Catalan side at the Bayer Arena in the group stage. This would qualify them for the second group stage, which I know it's a bit confusing. Leverkusen would top the second group stage, which had Arsenal, Juventus and Deportivo La Coruña in their group, meaning they would play Liverpool in the quarterfinals. After a loss in England at Anfield, Leverkusen would turn the tie around in the second leg and win 4-2 in Germany to advance to the semi-finals, where more English opposition in Manchester United awaited them. Leverkusen and Manchester United would draw both games, but Die Werkself would progress to the final on away goals. And so Leverkusen would be the first side to reach the Champions League final having not won their national championship, which is quite funny considering the situation they found themselves in 11 days ago. And so their opponents were Champions League regulars and Champions League perennial winners, Real Madrid. Despite going down early on, Leverkusen would manage to get a goal back from Lucio. However, in the 45th minute, Zinedine Zidane would produce one of Champions League's greatest ever goals, with what turned out to be the winner. So this meant Leverkusen ended up having 3 trophies to win and came away with 0 in the space of 11 days. And then to make matters worse, Michael Ballack, Hans-Georg Butt, Oliver Neuville, Carsten Ramlow and Bert Schneider would all lose in the World Cup final a couple of weeks later to Brazil in the 2002 World Cup in Japan and South Korea. And the next season, Leverkusen felt a massive hangover and flirted with relegation, as Michael Ballack and Steve Roberto would both be sold to Bayern Munich, and Klaus Toppmöller would be sacked at the beginning of 2003. But Lucio, the goal scorer in the Champions League final, would follow the midfielders to Munich a year later. All of them would go on to win the Bundesliga. And the rest is history really. Leverkusen kind of drifted for the next 20 or so years, and then in 2022 they would hire Xabi Alonso. After one season in charge, he made them title contenders and would win the Bundesliga unbeaten, the first team to ever do so. Alonso would then leave in the summer of 2025 and would be replaced by Erik ten Hag, who would be sacked after only 2 Bundesliga games in charge, and he would be replaced by Kasper Heumann. So that's the story of Bayer Leverkusen, or Bayer Neverkusen, who have now been coined Bayer Neverkusen. But it's one of the more well-known stories in German football, as in the name is well-known, but maybe the story itself is not well-known, and obviously it's quite interesting due to the fact it's got the government, cocaine use and just failure, and final day drama, which who doesn't love that? So let me know what you think of the Neverkusen story, of what you think of Leverkusen now, or if there's any other stories like this you want me to cover in depth.